bills on time, it does put them in a crunch, but it's my understanding that eventually they do come through, so.
All right. The second question comes from Tom Graw, the Pocahontas County Economic Development Director. In Pocahontas County, we have 171 wind turbines in place, and construction will begin this fall on an additional 40. However, we lack adequate transmission capabilities to fully utilize this wind energy resource. In addition, in Gilmore City, the quarry wishes to expand its operations, but our county has nearly maximized its natural gas capacity. How will you work with various agencies to ensure sufficient infrastructure is in place to facilitate the expansion of business and industry, and specifically address these two issues? Susan.
Well, I'm familiar with this problem because my Uncle Herbert has a windmill on his farm over by Britt, the property that he owns, and he is very frustrated that they cannot get hooked up from where they make the energy into the grid. And I think again, it's a group, we all have to work together on this. I don't know that's the infrastructure problem that we need to build on in the state of Iowa. And I'm sure it's going to involve the Board of Supervisors, excuse me, and various state agencies to work together to solve that problem.
I would agree, and I think this is a nonpartisan issue. I think this is something that everybody can agree on. We really need to work on upgrading our infrastructure up here in rural Iowa. I think that we've been neglected. I bring up Highway 20, and I often mention Highway 20. You know, we've been trying since 1950 to get Highway 20 4-lane river to river. And we're getting closer, but by the time they get it built all the way to Sioux City, it's already crumbling on the eastern end. So I don't know if we'll ever truly have a good Highway 20. You go down to Des Moines, and they got great looking freeways and nice 4 lanes, and it seems like they got all kinds of good infrastructure down there. They seem to want to neglect not just Northwest Iowa in our House district, but rural Iowa in general. And I think if we can work on upgrading that infrastructure, we can attract businesses. We get Highway 20 completed, so we have a good transportation route. We get the energy. One thing that Lorenz has been able to do is keep their utilities low. That's why we've always attracted factories, and we now host Jack Link's Worldwide Distribution Center because we've kept our utility rates low. So anything that we can do to upgrade the transmission lines, to further the wind power here in the state, I support.
All right, Tom. Before we move on to the next question, I heard both candidates specifically say this is a nonpartisan issue. We need to work on expanding our infrastructure and improving it. However, the question asked for what specific policies would you work towards to try to increase that infrastructure. So Susan, are there any specific policies you would look towards to be able to accomplish that?
Absolutely. What came to mind immediately, of course, was the iJobs program. And I do agree with Tommy, rural Iowa is neglected, but that is a tool that we can use. Whether, I know there's a controversy around iJobs, but I've heard just lately that Humboldt's going to get an award and at their factory there that will give us some jobs. So that's debatable, but the point relevant here is that we are paying people to improve our infrastructure. And rather than paying unemployment to people and getting nothing in return, the iJobs program, if it doesn't create another job, at least it is improving on our infrastructure, which we desperately need. So I think that's something the state legislature absolutely can do something about.
Well, in meeting with a lot of the communications and other utility companies, I know there's property taxes where they have to pay for their lines to run, and I know that's a concern for a lot of the small. We have a lot of independent telephone companies, and that's one of the things that they brought up is their property tax that they're paying for when they run the connecting line from the main line and the big company when they run it for that last mile. So as you're looking to upgrade utilities, you can also look at if there's property taxes that are assessed or other requirements assessed onto them that we can either give them some tax credits or some waivers to make it a little cheaper to put that initial infrastructure in.
All right.
And let me add, the factory in Humboldt that I couldn't think of is high capacity.
All right. The next question comes from a submitter from a questionnaire who wishes to remain anonymous. How does regionalism fit into the future of rural communities and counties? And what obstacles need to be overcome? Tom?
I guess if you could define regionalism.
Well, the submitter didn't specifically address a definition of regionalism.
Is this Pocahontas County against Kossuth County? Or
I would suppose in the idea of future of rural communities, I
Okay.
would suggest probably
Sure.
a rural versus urban perspective on regionalism.
Sure. As I've already stated, I think rural Iowa, especially all of northern rural Iowa, has been neglected by, I call it the city of the Gold Dome, Des Moines. They don't seem to want to provide much support for us up here in the rural areas, and we are just primed for development up here. The example of Jack Links, what better example could you give? You get good transportation hubs and routes up here, and we can develop this. We don't have to do we against them, we can do it together. We have a lot of traffic congestion on I-35 and I-80. If we can finally get Highway 20 completed, that would relieve a lot of the traffic down there. There's room up here to expand along the 4-lane highway. Businesses will grow. As in the old movie, they said, if you build it, they will come. I'm very confident that they will come. We'll be able to provide jobs, and we'll be able to keep our families here in Iowa, and our children will stay.
Susan?
Okay, I have two thoughts. I think if you build it, they will come. That's true, but we need to support policies. We need to support the things the state legislature is doing. And iJobs is a prime example of something that will improve our infrastructure. I was thinking, back to your question, the regional, if they're referring to the enterprise zones, that when counties can come together, that you can get tax credits for that. I think our economic development, like in Humboldt, I can't remember all the counties, the counties that come together and join their economic, like for us, Palo Alto, Kossuth, and then Humboldt shared, I think, too, with Emmitsburg, with Palo Alto. So I can't tell you the ones that went together at the top of my head, but the purpose of it is for several counties to go together and pool their resources and seek solutions, think outside the box, and I think that's a very good idea.
Okay. Moving on to education. Pocahontas area and Pomeroy-Palmer school districts are in the process of reorganization. Twin River and Gilmore City Bradgate recently ended a long-standing whole grade sharing agreement. Many of District 8's schools are small, with steep enrollment declines projected over the next decade. Now, if elected, what policies would you attempt to assist districts with declining enrollments to maintain the ability to provide quality educational services to their students? Susan, this one's for you first.
Okay, can you just repeat the last part of it, Chris? It got a little long.
Yeah. If elected, what policies would you attempt to assist districts with declining enrollments to maintain their ability to provide quality educational services to their students?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is the fiber optic network to enable the students to take more courses that their schools can't provide. So I think that would definitely be a resource. I think that the agency that I work with, the Area Education Agency, Prairie Lakes is the one that I happen to work for. It is a good example of pooling resources. Gilmore City wouldn't be able to hire their own school psychologist, their own speech pathologist, their own social worker, but they're able to access that through the Area Education Agency. So that's an important way that we could help them.
Tom?
I agree. I think we need to replace the ICN. It is out of date. It was poorly built over in eastern Iowa. The fiber optics are not up to standard as far as transmission of data. I believe that we could replace that. We could contract that out. The legislature could do that. There are several communication companies right here in the state of Iowa that could put in a brand new loop all the way around the state. That would also help with economic development because there's businesses that could relocate here, but they need enough capacity in data transmission to make it work. So as we bring more businesses in here, obviously we increase jobs, we increase employment, and there's your tax base in order to fund our schools. And I do have to say one thing that is hurting our local small schools is teachers get paid a base salary, and I believe it's $29,000, $30,000 a year, and then there's a supplemental salary. Well, these two salaries used to get negotiated separately, but now they are negotiated together. The problem with the supplemental salary is it's based on student enrollment. So even when the district negotiates, they have to negotiate it as a package, but the state only reimburses the supplemental salary based on the amount of students. So as the small schools lose enrollment, they're still on the hook for paying those big salaries.
Susan?
Going back to the fiber optics comments, generally, I'm very leery of private companies taking over the state jobs. In the past, when that's happened, like at our rest areas, private companies did a horrible job. It wound up costing the state more, and the state took it back. So I'm very leery of that. But in this case, with Havelock here, and I'm thinking of Mr. Miller, I can't think of his first name that I visited with, he has explained to me how inadequate that fiber optic system is. And so in that particular issue, I may favor private industry taking it. I think it might be advantageous in that case.
Well, I don't believe government should be in the business of being in business. That's why we have private companies. And I would trust the private companies. If they don't hold up to their end of the bargain, then you fine them, or you do whatever, you cancel contract and you relet the contract. It's not up to the government to be running businesses like that.
Can I have a rebuttal on that?
You may.
I think it's very absolutely up to the government to take care of public places, and we demonstrated we could do it more efficiently, providing better quality jobs than having a private company sublet it out and pay low wage jobs. I couldn't disagree more.
Well, I'll just say, sure, if you want to increase the size of state government, hire more state employees, pay more for unions, more retirement benefits, yeah, we can pay more, but it's up to you, the forgotten taxpayer. That's what it all boils down to. You as a taxpayer, how much more taxes do you want to pay? It's great if the state can do the job better, but do we thrive on capitalism or on socialism? The role of government is to get out of the way of business and let business do business.
Do I get a chance to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll let you guys keep going on this.
Because I think it was demonstrated that it was more cost effective that the government did it. It didn't cost us taxpayers more. In the end, it wound up costing us less. And I think that's very important. I believe in capitalism, and I think that it's working just fine in the state. I think the role of government is to help the people, and I think big government isn't the bad guy. I think there are certainly areas that we could reduce it in size, although I think what people want more is an efficient government. That getting the job done right is more important than the size.
All right, with that, I'll move it on. Tom, this question will be for you, and it comes from Jeff Hersberg, the Prairie Lakes Area Education Agency Director. What are the priorities that you have for education in Iowa, and in particular, the state's rural areas?
Okay, education is a very broad topic, so you have to get specific when you talk about education. And I want to give you my worldview on education, because it's very important that you hear that so that you know where I'm coming from before I answer this